Hey there, and welcome to today's deep dive. We're talking all things puberty. I know what you're thinking puberty, really, but trust me on this one. You've been exploring the fascinating world of animal reproduction, right? Think of this as the human angle, because today we're diving deep into the intricate biological symphony that plays out as we transform from kids to adults capable of reproduction ourselves. We're talking growth spurts that seem to happen overnight, those voice cracks that catch you off guard, and yes, even those pesky pimples that always seem to pop up at the worst possible moment. But here's the thing. Puberty, for all its awkward and sometimes embarrassing moments, is a truly remarkable feat of biology. It's like your body is reading from this incredibly complex instruction manual, carefully orchestrating hundreds of changes to turn you into, well, a fully fledged grown-up.
Absolutely. And what's fascinating is that it's not just one big change, it's a whole cascade of events, each perfectly timed and intricately connected.
Okay, so let's start with the most obvious change, the growth spurt. I mean, one day you're looking up at everyone, and the next you're the tallest one in the room. And speaking of growth, there's this table in the research we have that shows average height increases for boys and girls at different ages. I don't know about you, but I find it mind-blowing that scientists can chart out something as complex as human growth.
It is pretty amazing, isn't it? And remember those long bones, like the ones in your arms and legs? They're not just growing longer, they're actually being remodeled from the inside out during puberty.
Hold on, remodeled. It's like our bones are undergoing their own mini makeovers. But seriously, what does that even mean, remodeled?
Well, imagine your bones as construction sites, because essentially that's what they become during puberty. You've got cells called osteoclasts breaking down old bone, and then other cells called osteoblasts building up new bone, making them stronger and longer.
Wow. So it's like this perfectly synchronized dance of destruction and construction happening inside our bones. No wonder growing pains are a thing.
Exactly. And this whole process is driven by, you guessed it, hormones.
Hormones, hormones, hormones. They seem to be the puppet masters behind pretty much everything in puberty, right?
You could say that. Remember those chemical messengers we talked about earlier? They're like tiny little commandos traveling through your bloodstream, delivering instructions to different parts of your body.
So what you're saying is when it comes to puberty, hormones are basically running the show.
Precisely. They're the ones calling the shots, telling your body to grow, to change, and ultimately to become capable of reproduction.
Okay, so we've got this epic growth spurt happening, orchestrated by these tiny little hormone messengers. But it's not just about getting taller, right? I mean, there are so many other changes happening during puberty, both inside and out.
Absolutely. And this is where things get really interesting because those hormones aren't just telling your body to grow. They're also influencing your mood, your energy levels, even the way you think.
Wait, so those mood swings that everyone talks about, that's hormones too.
You bet. It's like your emotions are on a roller coaster, and those hormones are controlling the speed and the drops.
This is blowing my mind. So we've got the physical changes happening on the outside, but then there's this whole internal world of hormones that's also going through a major transformation during puberty.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that everyone's experience with puberty is unique. Some people might breeze through it, while others might find it more challenging. But understanding the science behind it can help us navigate those changes with a bit more understanding and a lot less judgment.
I love that, understanding instead of judgment, because let's face it, puberty can be a pretty wild ride, right? But it's also a completely normal and essential part of becoming an adult. So we talked about growth spurts and the hormonal roller coaster, but what about the really big question, the one that's often shrouded in mystery and sometimes even misinformation? I'm talking about reproduction.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a pretty significant part of becoming an adult, right? And it's all tied to these changes happening during puberty.
You're absolutely right. Puberty is all about preparing the body for the potential to reproduce. And a big part of that, at least for females, is the menstrual cycle.
Okay, the menstrual cycle.
Yeah.
It's something that every girl learns about eventually, but it can still feel kind of mysterious. Can you break it down for us? What's actually happening in the body during this cycle?
Absolutely. Think of it like this. Every month, your body is essentially setting the stage for a potential pregnancy. One of your ovaries selects an egg and starts to mature it while the lining of your uterus begins to thicken, getting ready to potentially receive a fertilized egg.
So it's like your body is prepping for a VIP guest, the fertilized egg, every single month.
That's a great way to put it. But here's the thing. If the egg doesn't get fertilized, then that thickened lining sheds. And that's what we call menstruation or a period.
Okay, that makes sense. But why all the buildup if a pregnancy isn't happening? It seems like a lot of effort for nothing.
Well, it's all about being prepared. See, back in the day, our ancestors didn't have access to pregnancy tests or modern medicine, so this monthly cycle was evolution's way of giving the body the best possible chance of achieving a pregnancy.
Wow, that's actually pretty amazing when you think about it. Our bodies are hardwired for survival.
Exactly. And it highlights just how interconnected our reproductive systems are with the rest of our bodies.
So we've got the menstrual cycle, which is primarily driven by estrogen, right? But what about testosterone? We know it's the main male hormone, but what's it doing during puberty?
Testosterone is the driving force behind a lot of the changes we typically associate with male puberty, like the deepening of the voice, the growth of facial and body hair, and the development of muscle mass.
Okay, so it's not just about reproduction, it's about shaping those kind of typically male characteristics.
That's right. And just like with estrogen, testosterone levels can fluctuate during puberty, which can sometimes lead to mood swings or changes in energy levels in boys.
It's like everyone's going through their own version of a hormonal roller coaster, just with slightly different tracks depending on their sex.
I like that analogy. And it's important to remember that both estrogen and testosterone are present in both male and female bodies, just in different amounts. They work together in this intricate dance to orchestrate the changes of puberty.
It's amazing how these tiny chemical messengers can have such a huge impact on our bodies and our lives.
And speaking of huge impacts, let's talk about another critical aspect of puberty that's often overlooked: brain development.
Wait, brain development? I thought puberty was all about physical changes.
It's easy to focus on the visible changes, but what's happening inside the brain during puberty is just as profound. You see, the teenage brain is still under construction, and those hormonal surges we talked about are actually shaping the way it develops.
So those mood swings and impulsive decisions that teenagers are known for, that's partly because their brains are still a work in progress.
Exactly. The prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain responsible for planning, decision-making, and impulse control, is still developing during adolescence. It's like the brain CEO is still in training.
That makes a lot of sense. But it also makes you realize how important it is to be patient and understanding with teenagers as they navigate this time of immense change.
Absolutely. Their brains are literally rewiring themselves, and that can be a confusing and overwhelming process.
It's like their internal software is being upgraded, but sometimes the new version glitches a bit.
That's a great way to put it. But here's the good news. This period of brain development also brings with it incredible potential for learning, growth, and creativity.
So it's not all bad news.
Not at all. This is a time when teenagers are forming their identities, exploring their passions, and figuring out who they want to be in the world. It's a time of incredible change, yes, but also incredible opportunity.
I love that perspective. But with all this change happening, both physically and mentally, it's no wonder that puberty can sometimes feel like a bit of a roller coaster ride, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's why it's important to talk about it openly and honestly. The more we understand about the science behind puberty, the better equipped we are to navigate its challenges and celebrate its triumphs.
I couldn't agree more. Knowledge is power, especially when it comes to understanding our own bodies. But before we wrap up, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier, the misinformation that often surrounds puberty. You're right. Some of the myths and misconceptions out there are unbelievable. Like the one we debunked earlier, the idea that the mother determines the sex of the baby.
Right.
As we learned, it all comes down to which sperm wins the race to the egg. X chromosome for a girl, Y chromosome for a boy.
Exactly. It's amazing how those long-held beliefs persist even when, the science is crystal clear.
It really is. Speaking of myths, there's another one that I have to ask you about. It's almost comical, but also kind of concerning. It's this idea that girls can get pregnant just by, being near boys, especially during their period.
Oh, that old chestnut. Yeah, completely untrue, of course.
Right.
Pregnancy can only occur through sexual intercourse. And even then, it's not guaranteed. It takes a complex series of events for a sperm to fertilize an egg and for that fertilized egg to implant in the uterus.
So let's clear this up once and for all. Just being near a boy, even during a girl's period, cannot lead to pregnancy.
Absolutely not. It's a myth that likely stems from a lack of understanding about how reproduction actually works.
It really highlights the importance of having those open and honest conversations about puberty, sex, and relationships, because when we rely on myths and misinformation, it can have, real-world consequences.
I couldn't agree more. Knowledge is power.
Yeah.
And when it comes to our bodies and our health, accurate information is essential.
Totally. It's like having a map to guide you through the ups and downs of puberty instead of just like stumbling around in the dark.
Exactly. And remember, puberty is a journey, not a destination. It's a time of incredible transformation, both physically and mentally. And it's okay to feel a mix of emotions along the way.
For sure. It's about embracing the changes, celebrating the milestones, and remembering that everyone goes through it, albeit in their own unique way.
And don't hesitate to reach out for support if you need it. Talk to a trusted adult, a healthcare provider, or even a friend who's going through similar experiences. You're not alone in this.
That's such an important reminder. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from the science of growth spurts and hormonal changes to the importance of accurate information and open communication. But if there's one takeaway I hope you leave with, it's that puberty, for all its awkwardness and complexities, is a normal, healthy, and ultimately positive part of life.
Absolutely. It's a time of growth, discovery, and transformation. A time to embrace the changes and step into the incredible potential that adulthood holds.
Well said. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us, and remember, as always, stay curious.